All right. A new NBA season is upon us. And I will say, out of all of the teams, it's very hard to pick some of the up and comers that you're excited for. I had to narrow it down to like five because, most of the league is either filled with young and promising talent or a pretty loaded team that is either going to underperform or, win it all. And I think to a degree, you're trying to you know, set realistic expectations when you're talking about these young teams. And while every team, has some young talent or someone that's going to be interesting to watch, there are five teams in particular that I'm really excited to watch this season. I'm just going to start by saying the Orlando Magic. They're a great team. I think they have a great player in Pelo Banchero. I think he's going to take a big leap this season. He might have a sophomore slump, but overall, I mean, he averaged 20 points a game in his rookie year. Not on the greatest of efficiency, but I do think that the Magic have a lot of young talent, and at some point, it's got to lead to something. Being in the lottery every single year is not good for their franchise, but they have a good player now, like a really good superstar player, the next, not maybe Dwight Howard or Shaquille O'Neal, but he can definitely turn into like a top 20 player that you're comfortable saying, all right, this is a good enough player for us to, sneak into the play in a couple of years or get into the playoffs in some way. And I think that the Magic also have a lot of other young talent. Interested to see how Anthony Black plays out. I love Wendell Carter Jr. I like Cole Anthony a lot. They have a lot of guards. They're a very guard heavy team. You see guys like RJ Hampton not be able to crack the rotation and make the cut. So that's kind of why I'm interested in Anthony Black and how he plays into the guard rotation. Maybe Jalen Suggs is the odd man out there. It's going to be really interesting because they do have Markel Fultz, who's kind of coming back strong after all those injury concerns. And, he's never going to live up to the number one pick potential that he had, but, he's still a damn good basketball player. Another team, which to no surprise of anyone, that I'm going to say I'm really excited for this year is the Spurs. Obviously, not a great team since they lost Kawhi Leonard, and not a very interesting team to watch, in my opinion. I think Wembenyama does wonders for them in terms of someone that you can really say is box office. Not to be too cliche about the whole box office comment, but I would just say like you need a star on a team to make a team really fun to watch. But overall, they do have a lot of other fun players. Like I love Keldon Johnson on that team. Overall, Wembenyama has definitely shown that he is a talent, unlike one we've ever seen. And he alone is enough to watch the Spurs. But Greg Popovich is in the last few years here for sure. Like he may not say that he has any, intention of retiring, but I mean, the guy is getting up there, and I wouldn't be surprised if he retires this year or the next couple of years. So, overall, I think that Wembanyama is being coached by the greatest coach in history of the NBA, and I also think that they have enough young talent to surround him that they're going to be a fun team that's definitely on the rise in the West. Another team that I think no one is really thinking about or talking about is the Wizards. I don't know. To me, they're either going to be bottom of the league, absolute garbage, or they might actually surprise everyone and sneak into the playoffs. I think they're definitely not going to be a great team right away, but you still have Kyle Kuzma, who showed last year that he can really be a good player. And it's unfortunate because the Wizards now have kind of turned into this team that always sucks, but still has two really good players on it. Like last year, they had Porzingis and Kuzma, and they also had Bradley Beal too. And you're like, this team should not be as bad as this team is. And yes, there were injuries and whatever, but that's a talented team. So it's hard for me to say that I'm looking at Jordan Poole like he's going to change the culture and turn the Wizards into this amazing basketball team. But I see it; it's possible. They have a lot of talent there. Again, every team in the NBA does, but I think that the way that that team could gel potentially, I don't know. It seems like a very interesting team. I just think overall the Wizards just look like they're going to be a team that has fun out there, kind of like the Pacers with Halliburton. I kind of feel like that's what Jordan Poole can do for Washington. Another team I'm really excited for would be the Charlotte Hornets. I think they are you know, especially with Brandon Miller, the athlete that he is, the potential shooter that he can develop into being as an overall balanced scorer. I'm very excited to see what Brandon Miller turns into. Another thing, to pair with LaMelo Ball. But you also have seasoned veterans. You've got Terry Rozier and Gordon Hayward. I like Mark Williams a lot too. It's just really interesting to see what their team is going to look like at the deadline, because I do think the Hornets are going to be a team that's going to sell. It definitely depends on LaMelo's health. If he gets injured again, you're never going to see the player that he's going to be able to become. And it's unfortunate that one of the Ball brothers is already hurt. I think we can just all agree that the Ball brothers are better when they're healthy, and they make the NBA more fun to watch, and especially LaMelo, because his flash and talent is definitely on display at all times. He is definitively the player that we thought Lonzo would turn out to be in LA. And, Lonzo's not a bad player, but he's very much a role player as opposed to his brother, who has often superstar potential when you see it on the floor. So Charlotte, probably not going to be that good. None of these teams really are this year, but they have enough young talent that I feel like they're going to develop into potential. I don't know if I would say all contenders, but they're at least going to be playoff teams in the next couple of years. And finally, just to round out the whole video, I think the last team, but definitely not last in terms of how excited I am, they're probably the team that I'm most excited to watch outside of the Celtics, who are obviously my favorite team. But the Portland Trailblazers are in a really interesting spot right now because they do have some proven talent. They also have some young guys. I'm interested to see how the team gels, because Shaden Sharp had an incredible end to last season. They also have Jeremy Grant, who's beyond a proven talent. He's going to be their vet. And a lineup that they're going to run, which probably looks something like, Scoot Henderson, Anthony Simons, Shaden Sharp, Jeremy Grant, and DeAndre Ayton. I mean, that's not a bad starting five. I mean, it's not the best starting five in the West, but, this is a team that, hot take, really could make the playoffs. Maybe the play-in is a more realistic goal for them, and maybe even more realistically, they just don't even worry about it. Overall, I think the point is that the Blazers are going to be a very fun team to watch for the future, and I think you'll know enough about this season, about the direction that this team is heading in. If they show any form of promise and the team gels together as a unit, I think you could be looking at a scary, scary team in the West in a couple of years. Maybe not a team that's in the top one or two contenders, but definitely a team that sits around 5 or 6 at least. And that's not anything to slouch about when you're talking about how stacked the West is. Overall, I think all 5 of these teams are just teams that you can watch without any expectations. You're not necessarily expecting them to really make any noise, because both the conferences are really stacked and very top heavy at this point. But you can look at these teams and say, all right, well, as this aging talent starts to regress and exit the league, these are some teams to keep your eye on for the future.